Welcome back to the Grand Solar Minimum channel. Today's November 3rd, Wednesday. Happy hump day, already the middle of the week. Thanks for tuning in to this Grand Solar Minimum news update. We apologize for being away. Mari and I are still plucking away at the house, almost completion. So once that house is done, we are settled. You are going to start seeing a lot more content and more updates from our channel. But in the meantime, thank you for your continued support from all of you on Patreon and YouTube. Let's get started with some space weather. First, our solar wind speeds coming in at 514.4 kilometers per second with a density of 6.9. It's significant to mention that solar wind speeds have been over 600 in the last day. We had it happen 3 different times. I had alerts all day long about solar wind becoming increasing. Now, these did spark some unsettled conditions with our geomagnetic situations, but nothing storm-wise. Interesting note that KP indices are at a 1 and the 24-hour max is at a 3. Usually when you see solar winds as high as in the 600s, the KP is up as well. So we are still waiting for that significant storm, as it did not happen with that X solar class flare. And I can tell you this, the reason why we didn't see that storm is that sunspot was just too far south below Earth's magnetosphere, and therefore it did glance us. We did see some pretty auroras, but we did not get the geomagnetic activity that was thought to have happened. Now, we do have sorry about that. We do have another CME that happened yesterday, and I'll get to that here just in a second, as that is part of our stories today on grandsolarminimum.com. But today's cosmic radiation dosage rates are down 7.5%. Now, we were at a 9.1% just 48 to 72 hours ago. So the significance in the cosmic radiation dosage rates dropping has everything to do with the fact that we pierced the 600 kilometers per second 3 different times yesterday. Dropped big time, in my opinion. Now, when we get high solar winds like this, all the cosmic radiation that's settled around Earth in space gets kind of brushed away like a broom when the high solar winds begin. So therefore, we are getting less cosmic radiation dosage rates when we are experiencing high solar winds. Still, 7.5% is still rather high, but it's not the minimum conditions that we have been witnessing over the past several weeks. So, my predictions, I think the cosmic radiation will continue to go back to where it was, around the 8.5 to 9% ranges, once this solar wind starts to settle down. Will it settle down? Of course, eventually. But right now we're dealing with higher solar winds, moderate solar winds, and a little bit elevated than usual. Right now the TCI jumped from 6.80 to 7.24 from the last time we did a broadcast. That's over 4 days ago. So we are also checking out the top part of our atmosphere temperature going up a little bit as well. This is still considered cold. The record high for that is well above into the 40s. So, again, we are seeing some mixed signals from our star. We have 3 sunspots today, by the way. AR 2893 and AR 2891 are the northern part of the star. And also 2891 was the sunspot that produced the M-class flare. And we'll get into that here just in a second. And then 2887, still crackling with C-class flares. It is now on a way out as it turns towards the western limb of our star. And will possibly come back around as relabeled as another sunspot in the future. But right now we are looking at the possibility of a G2 storm on November 4th. My confidence in this is a little bit higher because this particular cloud, AR 2891, is, if you look at the middle of your screen, you'll see the bright sunspot to the right of the screen. It's turning away from Earth facing. That is where the CME came from. I'd say there's a better chance of a glancing blow of at least a G1 storm possible by the 4th. But like I said, we'll get into that here just in a second. So over the past couple of days, before the cosmic radiation dose went down, we have seen some pretty amazing stories online about hail. And one of the things that is believed to happen during grand solar minimums is the increase of lightning and hail. And a lot of that comes from because of the highly charged particles that are in the atmosphere. So let's get right into our stories for the day here on this update. Let's check out here at SPACEWEATHER.com. All is clear so far, but the long duration solar flare, by the way, from 2891 is expected to have some sort of impact by the 4th of November, and we are looking at the chance of a G2 storm. G1, G2. Again, those are not increasingly impressive. Those are very minor, nothing to worry about. And just like with the X-class flare, and folks, when it happened, I didn't jump on the air and go live, and there's a reason why. I want people to understand this. If this channel is not live about an event and everybody else is, there's a reason for that. And I'm trying to vet the information and not become over-sensational, just like some people have. And the good news is that we didn't have an impact from this X-class flare. Again, I'm not rooting for these events to happen to our planet. I'm just reporting on them. So, again, the X-class flare was a dud. It was a nothing burger. We had a KP of 4. The CME was starting to affect us late Saturday night into Sunday, and it never really materialized like we thought. Now, we did see some pretty auroras, but again, nothing crazy. X-class 1.0 is not that strong of a flare when you're talking about X-class flares, that is. And nothing happened to the grid, nothing really happened to GPS. It was just kind of a dud. And again, I believe that location of that sunspot was just too far south to make any kind of real impact on Earth's magnetosphere. So with that being said, we are now looking at the possibility here of a chance for a G1, G2 storm that is associated with this long-duration 1.7 solar flare that erupted from AR 2891. All right, let's move into some of this hail stories that I had for everybody here. Impressive hail accumulation after severe storm hits Tahia, Bolivia. Now, they're reporting about 2 feet of hail from this particular event. And I want to warn folks, we've also been guilty of this as well. So we did a story a couple of years ago when Mexico had these amazing hail events. And it's important to note that there was rainfall before this. And when you have a lot of rainfall and a lot of in a quick time, and then you have the hail melts as well, creating these flash floods, these streams that look like we are dealing with 2 feet of hail. Nonetheless, this is still an impressive event as these cars were dug out as if it had snowed. But the hail that fell definitely had an accumulation, a roll down streams, flooding of rain, and you could see here the fast-moving waters carried that hail to lower levels, and what seemed like 2 feet of hail that fell. Again, impressive hail. I'm not discounting this hail. I'm just saying that a lot of this was carried to the bottom from the top, and it made it appear that it accumulated more. Nonetheless, this happened on October 31st. Cosmic radiation dosage rates were still at 9%. So, once again, we're seeing the proof of what happens when we are definitely fluxed with cosmic radiation in our atmosphere, and we get a result of accumulating hail like this, lots of rain. We did a report Friday where we saw a year's worth of rain in just 2 days. So these kind of things, highly charged particles, do contribute to that. Hour-long hailstorm kills hundreds of ostriches in Aberdeen, South Africa. An intense hour-long hailstorm hit parts of the Eastern Cape on October 28th, again, during times where cosmic rays were high, leaving at least 450 ostriches and other livestock dead on a farm in the district of Aberdeen. This guy says he's 54 years old and he's never experienced a storm quite as severe as that. We lost a whole lot of ostriches, about 450. The hailstone struck some birds' eyes and broke necks, and others. We lost some of our goats and sheep and infrastructure that was blown away by the storm. So, again, this hail is getting dangerous. We're not even just talking about accumulation of 2 feet or tearing up some cars and roofs, but we're talking about now a loss of life among livestock. And we do know that hail creates, you guessed it, crop damage. And this is a report on what's been happening in Australia. Hailstorm damage to crops, cars, and homes expected to exceed $100 million. It's not a huge amount of money, but it's still a good amount of money. Now, this was also on October 28th. So we have a theme here between the 28th and the 31st. We had lots of hail, that destroyed crops, that destroyed livestock, that destroyed homes, that destroyed cars. But it says here that the damage to crops, cars, and homes produced by severe thunderstorms in South Australia, Victoria, and Tasmania on October 28th are still being counted, but are estimated to exceed $100 million. The widespread destruction, particularly to farming communities, has prompted calls for the government to assist. The Insurance Council of Australia has declared an insurance catastrophe for parts of South Australia impacted by significant hail, rain, and strong winds on October 28th. Insurers have received almost 24,000 claims from South Australian policyholders by November 1st. However, that number is expected to rise over the next coming days. Approximately two-thirds of the claims received so far are motor vehicle damage. Victorian policyholders have lodged almost 12,000 claims over the past 3 days, with most claims for home property damage, including from fallen trees. Around 100 claims have been received from policyholders in Tasmania. Insurers are advising that given the timing of last week's storms, it is likely many impacted properties will not be repaired in time for Christmas. Apart from the time of year, repairs have also been impacted by factors including a shortage of goods and COVID border restrictions impacting movement of accessories and other things as well that are needed to do these repairs. Now, the topic of grand solar minimum, as we know historically, is about crop damage, colder temperatures, hail increase, and we've seen a lot of impressive extreme weather events. Now, I can't say one way or the other, but it does show a correlation that over grand solar minimums, we see this kind of damage due to hail, flooding, snows, all that stuff. So here we are at the very beginning of this grand solar minimum, and we are seeing a lot of hail, a lot of crop damage, and of course colder temperatures are coming as well here in the northern hemisphere, and I'll get into that